ショップ、ショップ。
That was there for Snuggy in the chat and his clear counter-revolutionary British propaganda of dissent in the chat. Anyways, welcome back. It is Monday, which means it's nappy time. This is Vivre with my co-host Aldous. Aldous, feel free to introduce yourself for those who
Aldous.
might not know who you are.
And I actually bear full responsibility for this episode. I sent the video that prompted tonight's topic to Odin, so it is all my fault. I apologize.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. As it states in our title, it is the Cestui que vie, which is French for the quest of life. And
we may not have lives, but we are just as pretentious as those that do.
Absolutely. And I will refer everybody to our nice little ticker at the bottom there. You know, I'm something of a Napoleonic War expert myself. Quoted from Arthur Wellington, probably. Just to spite all this. I don't know why you host this show with me. You probably have much better things to do on a Monday.
I've got nowhere else to go.
Well, according to Ridley Scott, that's exactly the case. Let's bring it up.
This is true. Yes. Let us do this.
All right.
So ass. Let him.
First things first. This is what's spurred tonight's little thing. We're not going to go and look at the articles. We actually have the interview. No, but Ridley Scott tells history buffs criticizing Napoleon, his upcoming biopic, to, quote, get a life. And so, yeah, we're going to have a little bit of fun for the next hour. In the meantime, let's say hello to the chat before we get started. We are first in the chat is Miranda Mary. A troublesome shrew has entered the chat. Hashtag troublesome shrew crew. That's going to be a thing. We're going to make it for like all of 5 people who turn into our show on any given night. We got Mo Biggs is there in the chat. It wasn't applied whose life is being looked for. Ours collectively. I mean, we're here. It's Monday. There's nothing better to do.
This is true.
Snuggy's in the chat. I will not bring on the stream his counter-revolutionary British propaganda. Got some Halen going around. We've got 4 people in the chat. Let's see. One of those is probably Aldous. So we're going strong. She may not know the context of my troublesome shrew joke. I assure you, Mo, she has watched like all of our streams, which is both sad and impressive. We congratulate you, Miranda.
Well, I do want to offer a little bit of a prologue here. And that is to say that, one of the things that I constantly say is that the thing that the most appropriate response to that which angers you or troubles you is apathy. And at no point are we really angry about this. I mean, we had our little outburst of like, this is ridiculous when we watched the trailer. Now we're just having fun with it. So yes. I will say this. If Odin wants to go down the road, because there is a Netflix adaptation of a certain Carthaginian general.
I know. You sent that to me earlier, and I nearly threw my phone against the wall.
That's the kind of stuff that I don't want to touch. This is just funny because this is supposed to be, and this is billed as a historical epic, the kind of film that Hollywood just doesn't make anymore, and only a man like Ridley Scott can do it. And one of the things that always highlighted those epics was a general attempt to be as close to history as possible. Yes, it's still a movie. Yes, there needs to be cinematic moments, but they try to portray the history at least as carefully and as delicately as they could. And that is very evidently not being done here. And so I just want to make sure that there is a delineation between the two. We're having fun with this. At the end of the day, we're both still thrilled that we're getting Napoleon on the big screen.
Yeah.
But this
I think that when his monster cut of this comes out on Apple TV, we're going to need to do a live stream session of it, like where we like go down like multiple Mondays and like watch this thing and do live reactions and EFAP it for like that'll give us like a half year of content. It'll be great.
Oh, for sure. Keeping in mind that on our normal series covering the history of Napoleon, we have only just finished the French Navy's defeat. So we're not even at 1800 yet. But
we will be returning to our normal programming next Monday, barring any act of God or just Aldous and I being too busy.
Yeah, next weekend is a holiday week too. So
is it next so. Monday?
Well, it's the week, not the holiday.
Oh, that's right. Yes, Thanksgiving. Jesus, November's going by quick.
There you
go. Anyways, in the chat, Mo Biggs was saying, I wasn't sure if you were here for Ogden's controversial phase. Thank you, Mo. She said, and Miranda responded with, I am sad and impressive. She's good people. And then Snuggie welcomes Miranda. And I think that catches us up. Awesome. So, yeah. Let's find out why Aldous and I need to get a life. We're going to stop sharing that screen, and we're going to share this one. All right.
Napoleon is one of the most highly anticipated movies coming to our theatres this November. The real story of one man who would define an era.
I let the French victory too long.
I still can't get over how terrible her hair looks.
The characters in this movie
I'm going to pause that. I realize that that's really petty. But, like, Josephine's hair is god-awful in that. And I know that you had your, like, coy response. But she is still a member of the French nobility at this point. Like,
yes.
Really? Not even, like...
Well, what's astounding about that is, I mean, if you take a look at some of these battle scenes and some of the close-ups of the uniforms, they're accurate down to the battalion level with the collar markings, the cuff markings, even the leather is the correct color, whether it's not always necessarily bleached white, it's bleached tan. They went all out. Even the muskets that they're holding are correct in some of the close-up sequences, which is something usually you don't get. A lot of times you'll just get whatever was sitting on the back a lot. But this was impressive overall in its detail. And then to have these little slipshot moments where it's like, you know...
Did you even care?
Yeah, like pop modernism bleeding through it. And even then, I mean... we have to take that with a grain of salt, right? Because they're speaking English at the end of the day, with all of them with weird, strange accents that don't even unite.
Yeah,
they're not quite as bad as Sean Connery with the Scottish accent playing a Russian submarine captain, but we're really
I thought you were going to go way more obvious with him playing a Spanish swordsman in Highlander.
That is completely believable. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Anyways, Mo Biggs in the chat has some gold. 6 months of this movie every Monday. Garfield was truly the Cassandra of the feline world. Snuggie Jr. says we can thank Nappy for Thanksgiving, and Ogden just hates women, but Mo Biggs wins once more with Ogden. Please refrain from referring to Josephine as nappy-headed hoe. Anyways, all right, back to our terrible video.
Yes, indeed.
I want to delve into the history and the shooting process of these large-scale battle scenes.
Wait, you want to pause it right there?
Guide me through it.
Yeah.
All right. So he wants to go into the history and the movie-making aspects of these mega battle scenes. That's his intro to the next 16 minutes. So keep that in mind. That's his thesis. That's what he's going to try to do.
Let's focus on how awesome shooting these battle sequences are and representing the history is. Yeah.
That's the thesis. So you
look at this like puddle of a human being sitting down here. It's like, yes, I'm Sir Ridley Scott.
Yes. If ever there was
knighted?
Yes, he was. If ever there was for his movie making prowess, those vast historical epics such as Gladiator.
Please tell me you're joking.
You couldn't tell by my deadpan. Come on, man. I mean, he does arguably have two of the greatest sci-fi movies under his belt in the last 45 years.
Yeah, I mean, Gladiator is a fantastic movie. It makes me have aneurysms on certain aspects of it. But like from a storytelling feat, it is well paced. It's well written. The design is great. The opening battle sequence is fun. Yes, there's a lot of inaccuracies there, but it's entertaining and captures the spirit of what like fighting a Roman legion would be like. It doesn't do an accurate job of portraying how all that stuff works, but whatever. Anyways, going on to this. Ugh.
Director himself, multi-award-winning filmmaker Sir Ridley Scott. Do you feel incredibly lucky that you created these epic films?
Every time. My
team
applause
it there.
Look, I'm going to rewind a little bit just so we can get the look on his face on here. Hold on.
Multi-award-winning filmmaker Sir Ridley Scott. Do you feel incredibly lucky that you created?
This man does not look even remotely enthused to be on this couch promoting his movie.
These epic films.
No, I mean, and so as far as epics films go, Alien, Blade Runner, arguably, possibly The Duelists, 1492, Conquest of Paradise is pretty good. Gladiator, I think most people would agree with that. Black Hawk Down is got a very large following. Kingdom of Heaven is up there. American Gangster is good.
It's okay.
Yeah, Body of Lies. But he really hasn't. None of those are real. He's got a couple, like 2 or 3 major epics, cultural zeitgeistial movies. And then he's got a lot of just good films.
Yeah. No, I would disagree.
He's for sure no Kubrick. And that's the other damnedest thing here. Throughout this entire video, he never cites Kubrick. And what this project is it's what Kubrick was working on.
No, it is not. That is actually a separate project that Spielberg is working on.
Oh, it is. Okay. I thought it was the same project.
No. I will defer that point because Spielberg is the one.
So this is the deep impact to Spielberg's Armageddon.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as we're on the original creative train, then we're good.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, the Stanley Kubrick one is being produced by Spielberg, and he's getting everything together for that. So I will triple check that, but that was the last I had read on it, on the Kubrick's Napoleon, which by all accounts, every single person that's read that screenplay has been like, this is one of the best scripts I've ever read. Well,
Kubrick did Barry Lyndon just to do a proof of concept for the uniforms, because one of his plans was, not to go too off topic here, to film Napoleon the way he wanted to film Napoleon. He needed to figure out a cheap way to do the uniforms, and they figured out a way to do paper printed uniforms that would look good on camera from a distance. And they utilized that a little bit in Barry Lyndon, and it didn't work out nearly as much as they thought it would. So we had to go back to the drawing board and tabled the project again.
Yeah. Speaking of Kubrick, do you think Ridley might get to direct a few episodes of Andor next season? Mo, this isn't Blue Milk special. Like, I love that show, but that's in what, like 2 hours?
3 hours.
3 hours? Yeah.
1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is with Steve, that Star Wars boy, Crazy Mad and Arrogant Ape, the greatest Star Wars show on YouTube. Check it out. Make sure you subscribe.
I know that you've got a wrench, bud. Can you put the link in the chat for us there, so that people know where to go if they want to catch that? I'm sure everyone here does, but I mean, Abe, Crazy Mad, and Steve, that Star Wars boy, do have a genuinely fantastic show that I watch. Like, it's like my Tuesday morning routine. Like, I love that show.
It's hilarious.
They're very good. Moses, sure, obviously. Jared Hess's Napoleon is most historically accurate. Oof. Okay. Back to this charming man who is very clearly excited about making historical epic films.
Right. I would like to correct Snuggie on that. Terry Calmieri actually has the greatest Napoleon Bonaparte display on celluloid ever done.
All right, so let's do
Every
it.
time. My team is, I have to think, is the best of business. It's the first time I can be out in the field. And he said, who are all these people? I said, this is all for you, mate.
Did you end up rooting for Napoleon?
Yes.
Poly mailers are a great way.
Poly mailers.
And with sticker mail, ordering custom.
I apologize, guys. I'm not paying for YouTube Premium.
Ridley, thanks for coming. Why Napoleon and why now? The big man.
In many respects, he's one of the great curiosities in history, anytime, anywhere. There's 400 books being written about Napoleon Bonaparte. 400. So clearly, he's one of the more interesting historical figures you could possibly
pause
imagine.
it there, Odin.
Both as military.
I like how he's talking about, he's had 400 books written about him, and he still makes it sound as boring as humanly possible. It's like, yes, he's got 400 books written about him, which, I mean, it's an achievement. It's not like he's had a movie made about him by me or anything yet.
And just for clarification's sake, Napoleon was probably the greatest commander in the 18th and 19th and 20th century militarily.
There's an argument for him to be of all time,
right?
I know
he's definitely in the top 10 overall without argument. But even by the close of the 1800s, there were more than 400 books on Napoleon. The last estimate was done by J.D. Markham, a professor at Oxford, and he estimates that there are over 300,000. So I'm really confused as to where Mr. Scott is coming from with his facts. I'm assuming he went to the same well that he did with some of the history in the film.
Probably. I mean, yeah. Well, let's find out some more about this guy. Mo Big states he still makes it sound as boring as humanly possible. Finally, Ogden gets a taste of his own medicine. Thank you, Mo. All right.
Military, politician, leader, emperor, everything.
There's so many versions of Napoleon, aren't there? There's the sort of the man that everyone's screaming "Vive l'Empereur." There is the lover. There is the. But you guys have teased out a kind of version of Napoleon I think is fascinating.
Do you think that Dan Snow was required to mention the lover aspect? Because I don't think any historian ever goes, you want to know what Napoleon's known for?
I don't think. In fact, if you go back to when we talked about Napoleon's rise and we went over Josephine a little bit, I was hard-pressed to find any of my biographies that spent more than a couple of pages on her as a person. Yes, he was infatuated with her. Usually that's just it's a statement, and then you move past it. Some people delve a little bit deeper into it, maybe a paragraph, but it's nothing that is at any point defined him. So it's really confusing that this becomes one of the primary focuses, and I don't get why, but we haven't.
I think that it's for that very reason. All this, I think that it is for that very reason, is that Josephine is this character that doesn't get that much of that much focus, and in this era where there is this major focus on women's agency and history and what have you, like it's a clear way to capitalize on it and try and bring in that market. But I mean, I could be wrong. I could be full of shit, but I don't think I am. like especially with some of the dialogue that's come out of these trailers.
Right. And do you think how much of a sellout does this make Dan Snow too? I mean, I would now, after watching this, I'm taking everything else he ever has to say with a grain of salt. Like he loses so much credibility just sitting down and having this conversation.
I don't know if I would say losing so much credibility, because like I mean, what are you going to do if you're a fucking historian and you have the opportunity to interview Ridley Scott, right? Like,
well, again, and I want to cite this. This only happened less than a minute ago, but this video's focus was to focus on the battle scenes and the movie making techniques behind them. So we'll continue and let's see.
100%. And I mean, there are absolutely going to be things that like his PR, like that Ridley Scott's PR team are going to want Snow to ask, and that's not something that you can just wave off. That's usually something that's done in contract. As somebody that I worked industry journalism, I've done this before. So it's like if you're doing an interview with somebody like this, their press team is usually approves a list of questions that you have, and then if there's anything that they want you to throw in, that's what they do. That's part of how this goes. But we'll have to see how this interview goes. If Dan Snow just ends up kissing this guy's ass the entire time, I'd absolutely agree with you. It completely deflates any credibility he has as a historian in my eyes.
Mo's got a chat that you need to read.
Yes, I saw a few.
Just the last one, then we'll move on.
To his credit, he crosses his legs like a proper lady. Fair enough. And what the fuck is on the wall behind them? Yeah.
When discussing one of the greatest military commanders in history, which
you would think that you would have
masculinity, people
you think that you would
bleeding
have
and dying for their country and for their belief in the concept of liberty, it's very important that you get the most feminine set possible.
Yeah,
because
this movie's about Josephine Aldous.
Yeah. Well, what they're really missing, and we're not through yet, so maybe we'll get to catch an ad, but maybe we could get some Summer's Eve or a Tampax box somewhere in the background just to tie the whole room together.
Of course, absolutely. So let's get back to this great video.
He's a little bit awkward sometimes, isn't he?
Well, this comes from Joaquin, because I'd done one version of the script, and then I could only think of Joaquin. He was always the man. I passed it by and said, "What do you think?"
And I will not fault Ridley Scott for this. Joaquin's one of the best leading men of our generation. And I do agree that, if it were not for the fact that this film was starting with Napoleon being in his 20s, Joaquin is the perfect person that I would want to have play Napoleon as he is fully fledged as emperor and everything like that. He's absolutely the person that I would pick. So I'm not going to begrudge that. Aldous, you and I have talked ad nauseum about that, so I'm not going to belabor too much of a point, but I figured it was worth stating.
Yeah.
Here.
And he couldn't believe that I wanted to play Napoleon Bonaparte. That was the initial reaction. Then little by little, we crept into it. Then I had a script which I could send to him. And then with Joaquin, and as the artist he is.
Do you think that Dan Snow wants to punch Ridley Scott in the face with how he's playing with his I don't know, just the way that Ridley Scott's gesticulating? I know that that's can be just a way of him trying to keep his hands from waving all over the place, but it looks like he's picking at his fingernails. And to me, that just seems ridiculously disrespectful. Or am I just weirdly old fashioned like that?
No, but he's a Brit, so he's gonna talk down. Plus, he's been knighted. He's got the Hoyt atmosphere about him, and always has. Even if you listen to him, how he refers to Joaquin, he goes, he's an artist. It's self-referential genuflection, and it's just, it's what you get with this type.
Mo asks, "Are those Josephine's granny panties?" I don't think that she wore much
Bloomus.
of anything. And then Nap spread. The poster is symbolic of the fact that this movie will be airing out of Napoleon's dirty laundry. Pretty much.
There was a lot to say, so we sat down for many days discussing who this man may be, because he said, I don't see him on the page. Who was he?
And you told me you still storyboard everything, but you
Well,
love drawing out
I
scenes.
drifted back into, because I had a good hand and could really draw and kind of really paint, but suddenly realized I should
Ever the
use
humble
it
man.
to prepare my.
Yeah, and I mean, to his credit, I've actually seen some of Scott's storyboards, and he's not inaccurate. He is a very capable artist, and yeah, like
Right, but what it doesn't take, and this is where the Hollywood aspect comes in, right?
Yeah.
Napoleon is a historical figure. We've already established that there are over 300,000 books written about him. There's easily a couple thousand that are written by contemporaries of his that knew him.
Yeah.
Some of those men even campaigned with him for over a decade. We don't reference any of those as we're sitting down and going, who was this man? No, it's the actor and the director going through their script of, who was this man? I don't see him on the page. Well, we're certainly not going to go back and re-script anything. No. We're just going to workshop our way through it.
And I mean, it would be one thing if he was like, yeah, I sent this to Joaquin, and Joaquin's apparently a huge Napoleonic history nerd, and he's read all these books, and so he looked at my script and was like, Napoleon would not talk like this. Napoleon wouldn't say this. And I mean, Joaquin is known as one of those. I think he's method, but like, who knows to what
he's
degree
extreme
he actually
method,
like who knows
Daniel
to what
Day-Lewis type style.
Yeah. So
instead of, because when you delegate a storyboard, there's a lot of times explaining what you want to do, and frankly, I could draw it faster than explaining it. So eventually, I'll stop storyboard and would draw it myself. So Napoleon's storyboard is this thick.
I was going to say that must have been that in itself.
Yeah.
Is a
Well, it's not stick figures. You're literally drawing close-up, medium shot, wide shot. So sometimes I haven't got the location, so I'll draw the location, then look at the drawing, then go find the location.
That in itself sounds like a work that should be in the British Library.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good stuff. No, it's good.
oh,
Yeah. Okay, so and we should say, when I heard you were doing Napoleon, I was like, this is very exciting. My goodness me, is it going to be the story of 1815 or the Austerlitz campaign? No, you did the whole thing.
No.
Why did you want to do the whole thing? Because that's a massive undertaking.
Well, why not? The whole point of doing it is the scale of his undertaking, what he managed to achieve.
Want to pause it there?
Any leader today that has achieved.
So, in his history of historical films, he's always done slices. He's never taken a character and done it his whole life. He has never had that goal. Quick off the top of your head, Odin, can you name any massive biopic Hollywood epic that's gone over a classical hero or a classic general or even a modern general and done a decent job of covering their entire life in a 2.5 to 3 hour movie?
Not at all. I mean, even when I think of the best biopics, like the first one that comes to mind is like Patton, right? You don't get World War I. You get freaking you get effectively the Bulge in North Africa.
Well, it starts off, you get Kasserine.
Yeah.
And then it goes from there.
Like that's the whole thing is you focus on a moment. And this is, and it's ironic because we're talking about this, and obviously you have Alexander the Great and Oliver Stone. While he fumbled Alexander hard, it is for the exact opposite reasons that I feel Ridley Scott's going to fumble Napoleon. Because I look at this guy and I don't see a guy who gives a shit about telling the story about Napoleon Bonaparte. But like, if you look at the director's commentary and you see the cast interviews and everything, Oliver Stone was dedicated to trying to tell the story of Alexander the Great. And, the narrative of that movie is a jumbled mess, but pretty much every historian goes, look, this is a nightmare, but like you have to watch the Battle of Gaugamela. You have to watch these battle sequences because Oliver Stone's attention to detail is insane. Like
Yes.
That's the whole thing is Oliver Stone fucked up because he loved Alexander so much and didn't know where to stop or where to focus. And it was like a kid with ADD trying to pick their favorite toy out of 20, right? This guy is, I might as well just try and do all of it. It's not that big of a period of time. It's only like a couple of decades.
Well, the reason I ask is it comes across to me that it's just hubris. Why do it? Well, how else would you make it epic? Well, you're supposedly this great filmmaker. Like he should be able to take one campaign, or it's the end of Napoleon's life and it's just done in flashbacks. Either one of those works. Yes, they're both tried and true methodologies, but they would make a better film than what he is presenting here, in my opinion.
I mean, and I don't disagree with you. I also think that
I'm just talking about how he's selling the film. We haven't even gotten to him really talking about it. This is just the lead up in it. And again, to Snow's point, he's supposed to be focusing on the battle scenes and the movie making techniques behind him. And other than talking about storyboards, which we've already bypassed, we're not going to come back to those. He hasn't even gotten to that yet. So continue.
No, 100%. And we're barely 5 minutes in, and it's like the rest the focal point of this hasn't even really come up. The other big thing with this is crap, I had a point and it just freaking went away. All right, we'll just keep watching the video, and if it comes back to me, I'll whirl it back around. But yeah, let's continue with this fun video. Before we continue, we have had some solid comments in the chat and some new audience members join us. We got Sugar Chris from Red Dress Press is here in the chat with us this evening. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, Sugar. We've got Rumble Roo Comics has joined. And I think I already did that, but it's Mo, so we'll do a repeat. The poster is symbolic of the fact that this movie will be airing out Napoleon's Dirty Laundry. Are you sure about this part in the script? Yo, bitches, check out my little general. It was little corporal, okay?
Le petit corporal.
Snuggie Jr., an ego-driven director? No way. Yeah, no, and I realize that that's not an uncommon thing, but it's disappointing because that's what I was going to say. The big thing that I think, and this is the real answer to his question, where I was like, well, why are you doing his entire life? And that is the fact that historical biopics are extremely expensive and they have not paid dividends at box offices in recent years. And so it is more than likely that even if he wanted to, the best way to handle Napoleon would be to break down into segments, kind of what we're doing. I mean, obviously we get sidetracked with silly shit like this, but us breaking down each of his campaigns and trying to capture that story and talk about it. It's the same thing when you're making a movie. You'd want to do his rise and the Italian campaign, and then you would do the War of the Second Coalition, right? And then you do this, and then you would do that, and it would all end with the finale of, him coming back from Russia, coming back after his exile to Elba, and with Waterloo. But the fact of the matter is that the truth is that studios are no longer willing to invest as much in historical epics because they are expensive. They require a fuck ton of cast and resources that studios aren't willing to put forward because the investment isn't always returned, especially if you have somebody that isn't the screenplay doesn't turn out well. I mean, Alexander. The people that worked on Alexander thought that they had made the next greatest movie, like the next Braveheart, and it was a dumpster fire. These things are very risky, And in an era where like you have movie franchises clearing $1 billion every 2 or 3 films, studios aren't looking at historical biopics the same, and that's the real answer. And it's tragic, but like that's what I think is this guy doesn't have, because this guy's ego is so fucking through the roof. He's not going to be honest and be like, yeah, so like I get what you're saying, but I only have one shot.
Right.
Like the studios don't want me to do a multiple film thing because that's an expensive undertaking. So I have one shot and I'm going to try and do this the best that I can. And I would have way more fucking respect for the guy if he had said that. But instead, he's this pompous dude. Oh, well, if you're going to tell the story of Napoleon, you tell it in one shot. You know for a fucking fact that every 3 to 5 years of that man's adult life is worthy of a movie. And you're
Sure.
going to
just the return from Elba alone, and then
Yeah.
The next 100 days. That's 2 films.
Exactly. Dude, that's a freaking political intrigue thriller is what that is.
Right. Well, and your great moment is he finally gets back, right? And the French government, the king, sends out the soldiers to capture him on the road.
And he sends the letter back. It's like, look, I appreciate all the troops, but you have to stop sending them. I don't have enough food to feed them all.
Well, and famously, he walks up in front of them and opens his shirt and who will be the first to kill me? And the men cheer. Because that's Napoleon, man. They loved him because he's willing to die for France. He's like,
Exactly.
they throw up their hats and cheer and they join him. And then he sends the letter back. That's how you end the first movie. And then the second movie is the next 100 days. And he reassembles the Grand Army and he goes about and he does, tactical, brilliant after tactical, brilliant move. And, then the Prussians defeat him at Waterloo.
I knew that was coming. Anyways. We got some Rumble Rue is saying my at Waterloo Napoleon did surrender. Maybe Jada Pinkett Smith should ask Netflix for a Napoleon docuseries. Oh man.
She really should have been cast as Josephine.
Oh dude.
With the hair,
I don't know, man.
Better? Is that better or worse? No hair versus the spiky hair?
I don't.
Back to the video.
Look, man, Josephine was not the greatest person on the face of the planet, but she was a hell of a lot better than Jada Pinkett Smith. I think that's insulting to her memory. Like, just going to be real. But
Napoleon is the Napoleon of movies.
Napoleon is the Napoleon of military leaders, I think. Because also, I think he had.
I like how that didn't even register to him. It was like, actually, Napoleon is the Napoleon of military leaders. It's like, I mean, yes. I think it goes.
Something amazing does happen here, and that you have a Brit, and this is very rare. You have a Brit that goes on to praise Napoleon for a number of seconds. So
that's fair.
A great sense of architecture, a sense of plan. He was a great politician. He was a great bureaucrat. And he elevated the bureaucracy and order of France dramatically.
All right, we're going to skip over this.
Can you pause it right there? I don't know where this started, but I'm going to blame the Robert Pattinson Batman film for this. Like, we take a semi-modern song that's going to, people in their 40s are going to have some nostalgia for. We slow it down and like make it dramatic. Like,
that is well before Robert. That is well before Robert Pattinson's The Batman, and you know it. But like that's been done for a hot minute.
What is this costume you have on? This is my uniform.
Oh, that looks good on
I
Toulon.
led the French victory at Toulon.
Napoleon was a talented gunnery officer.
Artillerist, not a gunnery. He was an artillerist.
Yeah, and I was about to follow up. I was like, that's funny because you have him leading cavalry charges in your trailer, you silly hack. Ugh.
His first opportunity came. They had a big problem of the English were blockading ports. The biggest port to blockade was Toulon. He went to Toulon to find that the general in charge was a court painter. And of all things, he was talented at painting fruit. So he went to the base and saw complete neglect, lack of leadership, and just took over.
That might be the best part of this interview.
No, it was excellent. That it's good history.
Those in power only see me as a brute, unfit for higher office.
It's also true.
You're playing Napoleon here at this point. He's nervous. He's nervous at this point.
Scared to death.
Yeah. This is the point at which he either walks onto the great stage of history or he stumbles and falls off it. Yeah.
And he got, I think he must have gone through many feelings at that moment of fear of failure.
Yeah.
Once you go this far.
I get what he's saying, because I think a normal person would feel this, but I don't think Napoleon. Like, and this isn't me being like the ultimate Napoleon stan or anything. Just based off of everything that I've read about the guy, I don't think failure came across Napoleon's mind whatsoever in anything he did.
One of the senior generals at the siege of Toulon. It wasn't the Battle of Toulon. It was the siege of Toulon. General Jacques Francis Dugommier stated that I have no words to describe Bonaparte's merit, much technical skill, an equal degree of intelligence, and too much gallantry. You don't say that about a man that was fearful. This was a man that approached everything with gallant honor, and he requested to lead the charge, and he led the attack.
Yeah.
And was successful. And then we're about ready to talk about where he was wounded, and we'll correct that too.
And don't get me wrong. That's not to say that, there are plenty of heroic figures throughout history that have done similar things, and they have felt that fear. They have felt that nervousness. But like everything that I have read about Napoleon, from biographies to reading transcripts of like quotes and stuff like that, uncertainty in his decisions was not part of his character. And in fact, this is something that, I think Aldous and I briefly talked about in one of our earlier streams, and how this was what undoes him at Waterloo. It is the first time in his life that he hesitates and is uncertain of his decision. It is what causes him to lose.
We will argue that when we get to the Waterloo segment of our regular show.
Yeah, but there is a moment of hesitation, and I don't think that is something I think that is something that is uncharacteristic of Napoleon.
You're presenting something that is not historically accurate.
Okay.
Orders were issued and ignored.
Fair enough. Okay. Point is that was not a part of Napoleon's character. Lack of certainty, just not what wasn't it. I'm sure there were points in his career where he genuinely had fear for certain things, but never in terms of his am I making the right call? Am I doing the right thing? No, that is not Napoleon.
It's better to die in the battlefield than fail.
And you show Napoleon in the thick of the fighting. He does actually get bayoneted in the leg, I think.
It's all accurate. What happened is all true.
No, it is not. As you're jumping over this, he was not bayoneted. The shape of the wound, as described during his autopsy, implies that he was hit by a pike or a sergeant's halberd spear. And the wound went septic after the Battle of Toulon, the Siege of Toulon, and he was. There was actually serious discussion about amputation. And throughout his life, the wound bothered him. That's why after the Siege of Toulon, in addition to numerous other health-related issues, like he had terrible hemorrhoids, really since about his early 30s. He hated riding horses because of that. It was extraordinarily painful. But also the wound, he actually, when on his deathbed, he could open the wound still up on his leg, and it was still seeping at that point.
So Mo Biggs is in the chat making some corrections here on you, Aldous. Says the Batman didn't start that. That's been going on since about 2012. It started in video game trailers before jumping into movie trailers.
Oh, I'm sure it did. When it comes to pop cultural references, I'm not exactly the one to go by. I'm just saying the Batman's the most recent one I remember seeing it in that annoyed me.
And then Napoleon is the Rolls Royce of military leaders, and Rolls Royce is the McDonald's of cars, and McDonald's is Napoleon of fast food restaurants. Ridley Scott, 2023. Very, very, very good Rumble-roo. No, he was Josephine's bitch. Haven't you seen the new movie? He was bayoneted by Josephine. And then Rumble-roo says, I think Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is the most accurate Napoleon biopic. I mean, by comparison, that might be there might be an argument to that. We'll have to see it on November 22nd. Hell yeah, halberds. Important things. Oh, I apologize. Bayoneted. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mo. Anyways, carrying on.
What we're looking at here is not CGI.
No, it's all real.
But we live in a world now where everyone's talking about AI and doing everything fake. I mean,
Well,
if you think your career will mark the golden age of massive films.
I think you feel when it's fake. When it's AI.
If you want to pause it here too before he goes into this, I do want to say something. He is up to this point, he is a pompous ass, and here's where his pompous assery really benefits the film. He is so incredibly arrogant, and he wants to do something that's epic. And they talk a little bit about this here. Every high-masted ship from the UK, Spain, and Italy was used in this film. Anything they could get that was even remotely historically accurate. If it had masts and had a sail, they used it. And they just used classic Hollywood camera fuckery to make them look like what they needed to look like for the Siege of Malta. And that, A+ on him for that. That's where his ego comes in huge to do something.
Because he's not gonna put his name on something that doesn't feel like classic film, right? Like, and I do agree with you 100% on that, Aldous. And especially in war movies, I think he's absolutely right. Like, if you have a massive CGI battlescape or what have you in a war movie, you can tell. Like, it doesn't hit the same.
Right. It's why people still to this day will watch the intro of Saving Private Ryan.
Exactly.
We shot this in Malta, which I've been there. Malta, in a funny kind of way, is an architectural gem. Really, architecture is medieval, Renaissance. It's stunning. Medina is incredible.
I was trying to film on a tall ship, and it's the first time I heard about your movie. And you couldn't find a tall ship.
Yeah.
Cornwall, no tall ships. They said
it was
Ridley
right then.
Scotland. He said everyone who's got a tall ship. Ridley's basically saying, put out the back call. Anyone with a tall ship, come to Malta. And I was like, doesn't he know we're trying to make a little podcast?
Aren't they great?
I mean, they're gorgeous.
I promise you brilliant successes.
We are discovered.
Good.
Wait!
Guys! It's a trap! Retreat!
Right there, you see that down there? That's an airport down below. That's an airfield.
Oh, right.
But the wooden is married to the wooden foreground where I shot Marx Aurelius and Gladiator.
Oh, okay. This is where you shot the Gladiator.
Same place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel incredibly?
That's actually a cool little tidbit.
It is, and that's again. This shows that he's a classic film director. He's using a double matte shot, right? So he's filmed the Austrian army charging across, and he matted out the bottom, and then he did a secondary shot and he merged them together. That's how you make a good movie. That's how you do scenes like this, and you make it affordable without using CGI, and you make it look real and lifelike. And God bless him for that. He's a very talented filmmaker. He's the only guy that could pull this Napoleon movie off, and it's just terrible that the same hubris that benefits all of these awesome sequences is also the downfall of some of what we've seen from the previews and some of what he suggests in this interview.
Yeah, 100%. And, we shall continue.
Lucky that you created these epic films.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
What's it like on location?
So humble.
Like, I cannot believe it.
Yes, of course.
Well, no, the first moment we turned up in Berlin, at the big house, we shot a lot of the stuff in the big house. And there's a unit of 900 personnel there. And it's the first time I came to being out in the field. And he said, who are all these people? I said, this is all for you, mate. He goes,
Yeah. You're
really? I
right.
said, yeah.
As a filmmaker, I can't believe anyone could. This would be the dream, wouldn't it? To be
Oh, yeah.
Sending
Well,
cavalry
no, I
charges.
try and take them as stride. You can't be afraid. You got to go out and say, no, stop. You got to be able to say, stop, it's wrong. Then adjust it. But, I run a film a bit like a board meeting. When you're approaching the movie, the production, the actual shooting, the whole unit's about 900 personnel. There's 40 HOD. So we sit around a boardroom table. I'll say, right, page 1, problem? No, page 2, problem. What's the problem? Have you talked to him? Well, talk to him. Page 3. That's the way you do it.
Yeah.
And then of course you'll come to things that really need proper discussion with us. That's how you find out what the real problems are.
This is that when they discover they're on the ice.
Ice! It's a trap!
This is an instant classic. This is an extraordinary scene on the big screen, isn't it? With
Yes.
falling
So
through the ice.
we
and
cut
the-
a large area about the size of 2 swimming pools. Go in the tank at Pinewood and shoot the stuff.
Okay.
Digital, the cannonballs hitting the water, I love. That's digital.
Yeah. What about historical accuracy? What if when the historian goes, sorry, Sir Ridley, it didn't quite happen like that? You go, listen, I've done enough with you.
Well,
you have to have artistic license,
I
right?
would say, how did you know were you there?
Could you pause it, please?
They go,
Yeah.
"Oh,
This
no."
is the moment you've been waiting for.
So he says, how did you know? Were you there? No, obviously, no one was there. However,
No one alive today, anyway.
yes, what we do have are hundreds of accounts from both Austrians and French soldiers that were present at Austerlitz, including Major General Karl von Studerheim, who famously wrote a detailed account of the Battle of Austerlitz, which is several hundred pages and details almost every event that he witnessed on the battlefield, along with citations and reports from everybody with all of his aides de camp and what they witnessed and what they saw. And that is how we know that the French accounts of casualties at Austerlitz are probably accurate in number, but not accurate in how they occurred. There were probably only a couple hundred that actually drowned because they weren't actually on a lake. They were in a very swampy area, and more than likely it was exposure. And we talked about this when we viewed the trailer a couple weeks ago. But von Studerheim's book is not the only one. There are multiple examples. Alexander Mikaberidis has a book on the Russian prisoners of war after the Battle of Austerlitz. Many of them were sent home, but before they were sent home, a number of them wrote their own accounts of what happened. And in addition to that, you also have Le Marchal de Vaust's account that was done in 1830. He was a French military historian, and he had the opportunity to interview hundreds of veterans that had served at the battle and got firsthand accounts from actual soldiers of the line who obviously couldn't read or write for the most part. Their kids could because of the implementations that Napoleon did with the Napoleonic Code, but they were still holdovers from the kingdom and the directory, and so did not know, where they were not literate. But they were able to recant their accounts, and their accounts almost to a man are very accurate with what von Studenheim has cited in his book. So no, while there is nobody that exists today that was alive there, we do have firsthand accounts. And Odin, could you just kind of briefly, you're more the historian than I am, could you go through the primary, secondary, and tertiary reference for what a historical account is? So that
Okay, absolutely. Before I get into that, we've got a fantastic comment from Mo Biggs. It sounds like Stutterheim was too busy writing to see what was going on.
So actually, that was his job with the Austrian army. He was actually there to write down, and every army had these guys that would all you're doing is recording the movements for what goes on in the battle, because it was very important after a battle, whether you win or lose, that the command and control elements get together and analyze what happened, what battalions moved where, what corps were deployed, and how did their divisions deploy. All of those orders were transcribed and reported, and you had people that were doing nothing other than watching. And if they couldn't see something, they would send one of their aides over to where they could watch it. Because there's no other way to record and monitor what's going on. And these people would then relay real-time data back to the Army's command, and then they would respond to that data.
Yeah, like this was how warfare was waged. You would have somebody that would oversee the battle and write down troop movements, casualty, everything like that, and then report it back, because that's how the command organism reacted and established their next moves. Now, in terms of primary, secondary, and tertiary sources, I mean, tertiary is like the easiest thing. It would be like a Wikipedia article, right? Like, it's not professionally vetted. It's just an account of things, usually like on an online database, or even encyclopedias at this point are considered tertiary. Secondary sources would be like a published book, right, where you have like an accredited, like a professional historian in a specific field does a book on, like, I just recently read Pax by Tom Holland. That would be a secondary source, which is a peer-reviewed piece that incorporates primary source material to create commentary on events, right? And then you have primary source accounts, which are firsthand eyewitness pieces that are contemporary with the events that happened. And with the Napoleonic era, and this is something that's very special about it, we have such an immense amount of primary source material of it and all of the characters that are involved in it because of how grand scale it was.
Well, we're only a half generation away. Well, a generation to a half generation away from the 7 Years' War. A lot of the same players in the 7 Years' War are players in the Napoleonic era. And the 7 Years' War, we have a lot of accounts. I mean, obviously, here in America, many of our great military leaders were veterans of the 7 Years' War, George Washington in particular. And so that's the first major war that's global in scale, where you start getting ground level reports from people that are educated and literate on the ground, being able to tell you what happened in battle. It only grows for the Napoleonic Wars, and then it only grows beyond that for each war thereafter, to the point that, like, we have amazing levels of detail for like what happened in World War I at Verdun, because of the amount of letters that you can read for soldiers and what they're talking about, what their experiences were. We know all those things now. And that only grows with each individual combat or each individual military engagement as the years go on. But the important part here is that we actually have that data. So Scott's just talking out of his ass here. And it's that hubris aspect. And this is the double-sided coin. It can be both a positive and a negative. He's dismissing that which doesn't fit his vision because he doesn't want it to exist, and it probably, to be fair, he probably never even looked it up to see if it does.
100%. And to that effect, it would also be one thing if he said, look, I understand that there are inaccuracies. I wanted to tell this story in a way that I felt that would best engage with an audience. Sometimes that requires me to use artistic license, and so I jazz things up here or there to try and make it more of a spectacle. But instead it's oh, well, were you alive back then? And that's like the sleaziest response.
Right.
And
you say, who wants to see cannonballs smash into the ice over a swamp? Doesn't a lake sound cooler and look cooler?
Exactly.
Okay, man. Point made.
It's like, all right, cool.
I
So
want the lake. I want the cannonballs embedded in the lake. You just gotta just sell me on it. Don't be a slimy lawyer weasel, you know. And that's what he's
Exactly.
coming across as.
Now Mo Biggs just keeps winning tonight because his comment's gold. Or the primary source, your grandma, who doesn't care what the historians say, she just knows it in her heart.
Right. Or I like the other one. Were you alive back then? It's not for you.
Damn it, Mo. We gotta talk, man. These are gold. I've got people asking for troublesome shrew t-shirts. Like this is absurd. Spider-Man wrote a book. Not to be Professor Tom Holland, not to be confused with Tom Holland of MCU fame. Two very different people. Both British, but two very different people.
Peter Parker is Spider. Moving on.
Right. So I said, Rod had 400 books written about him. So it means
yes,
maybe the first one is the most accurate. The next one is already doing a version of the writer. By the time you get to 399, guess what? A lot of speculation.
Oh my God, really, dude?
That's a great shot, though, man.
Yes, this is a great shot, but like, really?
He's just a pompous ass. We've already established.
By the time you get to 399, there's just a lot of contradictions. Like, except there isn't. Like this is a period of time where, as you said, we have general officers whose sole job is to record the battles. We have an immense amount of written primary accounts of the Napoleonic period, and most everything matches up, which is, by other periods of history, fucking unprecedented. Like, you never have the numbers match up to the degree that they do during the Napoleonic period.
No.
Like,
to cite Stutterheim's book, almost all scholars agree, even though he was a part of the Austrian army, it is extraordinarily fair. It cites every failure that the Austrian army made, which were actually very few. Tactically, the Austrian army did nothing wrong. They were just completely outmaneuvered and outplayed by Napoleon.
Yeah.
And Stutterheim makes that very clear, that he shows nothing but respect for being outmaneuvered, because, again, this is an era of gentlemanliness and honor. And you wouldn't want to be beaten by nefarious means, but to be beaten on the battlefield by a superior tactician, there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
There's no shame in losing to a better general. And they lose to a better general. And Stutterheim repeatedly in this book, I highly recommend you check it out. Detailed account of the Battle of Austerlitz. You can get the PDF for free if you dig around online. A little bit of a heady read, but worth it if you're interested in the topic.
Absolutely. You all right?
Yes, I am now. Thank you.
I thought that you were still going, but
nope, you're good.
All right.
Do you love writing, but
I do.
working 40 hours a week?
I don't. Who
I'm
works
Sarah
40
Turner.
hours a week? Oh, I wanted to see what Sarah Turner had to say.
Yeah. You can go jump off. That will never not irk me. Napoleon leading a cavalry charge.
He was a terrible horseman.
He's a terrible horseman. And it's also just a shame because it's like, you could have done so much cooler stuff with having him like conducting a freaking artillery barrage while having like Joaquin Murat lead a cavalry charge, and like showcasing, because the thing about Napoleon, and you've said this over and over again, is Napoleon has an eye for talent and he surrounds himself with the best. And so you could have these whole things where you're showcasing each one of Napoleon's core commanders doing cool shit, and it's all for the glory of Napoleon. Like, yes, these individuals are impressive, but at the end of the day, who do they serve? They serve Napoleon.
Right. Well, and this is post anything post his Egypt campaign you're even less likely to see. I don't know, how detailed do you want me to go into some of his medical issues? Because I mean, a lot of this is fairly well documented, but you're not going to see. It's very, very unlikely that you would see him spending any time riding a horse fast.
Yeah, he had
For a
like
variety of reasons.
ulcers, right?
What's that?
Didn't he have like an ulcer in his stomach?
He had
Like that?
so gastric cancers were in his family. His father passed away in his mid-30s from gastric cancer. His eldest sister Pauline passed from gastric problems. He had gastric issues. He had very, very bad hemorrhoids. Also, he got more than likely a Bizarelli infestation when he was in Egypt, which caused stones to form in his kidneys and his bladder. And it was based off of assumptions, based off of what the French doctors have wrote for his notes. Basically, he was constantly unable to completely relieve himself due to blockages. So riding on a horse, I mean, if anybody out there has ever suffered or knows anybody that's suffered from an inflamed prostate, imagine that only with a pain threshold of like constantly always trying to pass a kidney stone. It would just, he would not ride a horse for any length of time if he could help it, because that would only just irritate the system more. He wanted to sit down and just stay still as much as possible.
So we're at a watermark high for this stream of 6 people tuning in on this chat. Welcome some person to the chat. Napoleon had lost testicle, but he had 3 more to spare. Also, great comment from Rumbleroo Comics. Napoleon, charge cavalry. Sir, you're sitting backwards.
Well, and also, I mean, that's the other ridiculous thing too is, Napoleon had some of the best cavalry commanders under him that ever served in the 19th century. So there would be no reason for him to ever lead a charge when he had men of superior tactical understanding underneath him that understood cavalry much better than him. Because again, his entire military career, right from when he was a junior officer, was artillery. He was an artillerist.
Yeah. Mobig says he had really bad hemorrhoids. I bet he'd be thrilled at the attention to detail of these historians.
Actually, Mo, there are, and I'm not kidding, man, hundreds of pages from the French Army Medical Corps on how they can address it. That's how bad they were.
Yeah, like he was in a lot of pain.
He was leeched constantly. I'll put it that way.
Listen, are you shouting at that guy? Come on, man.
No. What I do, because this is about 11 cameras.
Exactly. Well,
so I have to be in a trailer with 11 monitors bigger than that, and I'm watching everything. So I was a very good camera operator, so I can talk to an operator as an operator. Say, you missed it out. You're too slow, too fast. Before you go, you're too wide. You go try to. Okay. So I'm. My real film school was advertising.
Yeah.
So if you do 2,500 commercials personally, and I'm on the camera every day, it's a great school.
This standard bearer galloping away is such a great moment.
I'm not built like other men. All the earth is uniting forces against me.
More trailers though.
This is it. We're gonna portray.
Blood Redoubts though.
Bizarrely, the 2 armies are almost 2 miles apart.
Forming a square. This is brilliant. And you've got the king's color. You've got the right flags there. I mean, it's all happening.
And this is all real.
I mean, that is
epic. But
you've seen this a million times. Do you still is it? What's it like when you watch this now?
No, I always think only. Well, I'm in a room in a tube with all these monitors. No one in there. Can't have in there. I don't want any advice. No, I want to follow my own sword.
Okay.
So I say stop. Now I say come in. So we bring them all in, and if we're getting clogged up, we'll bring the operators into the trailer. Say right, watch this. There, readjust. So you've got stunts, you've got operators, and we readjust the shot, and then they go back and do it. It's very efficient. My team I have to think, is the best in the business.
Do you go to bed at night thinking, I cannot believe I've just engaged an
No,
entire generation in the Roman Empire, or now in Napoleon? There's going to be people out there?
Well, I'm quietly proud of it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm thrilled that I'm still allowed to do it. I'm still capable of doing it, but I'm still allowed to do it. I love it.
Did you end up rooting for Napoleon?
Well, anybody vulnerable, you tend to root for them.
Okay.
And I found Joachim, one of his biggest, most powerful things that he has is he's a very sympathetic man.
Yeah.
And he's vulnerable.
He's vulnerable.
So even playing a bastard, even when he's playing the joke, he's vulnerable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best temptation of a monster who's vulnerable.
But and that's the interesting thing about Napoleon is but also he can play. Joaquin Phoenix plays him both as a genius and as uncertain and vulnerable and
completely.
Insecure. Yeah, it's very.
That's very important because that makes him more interesting, I thought. And we knew by enough research, when you look at the research and understand his hesitation, he had to be vulnerable.
Cut off their retreat!
It was really amazing to watch him touch the really dark places. I could really see him tapping into that kind of psyche.
My destiny is more powerful than my will.
Somebody help!
Oh my God.
They won't take the
Really?
Hunter
Another
will.
one? All right.
At least the scenery was nice.
Fair enough. We have been joined by Comics Mate, and we are up to 7.
Hey, Dean. Good to see you, man.
Mo Big says that he should get Ridley to direct the ARO film. These studios don't understand my vision. Live action, live orangutan, live ammo. That's all I ask. I mean, that's fair. Some person asked, so what drugs did Napoleon take for pain, or did he stay away from them?
He was leeched constantly, and leeching inherently would alleviate the pain. Other than that, I have no notes on anything. I don't recall any medications. He wasn't an opium addict. He didn't use laudanum or anything like that.
Yeah, like that.
He wasn't a nicotine addict. He very rarely drank. At one of the things, because of his family's history of gastric problems and cancers, he didn't drink that much alcohol. And in fact, because he was so focused on tactical and planning out the campaigns and things, his staff officers usually had to force him to go to his tent to get any sleep. And even then his sleep was fitful and restful. God knows what this guy would have done if he would have actually gotten decent rest and had a healthy diet.
He was a notorious crack enthusiast, claims Mo Biggs.
His doctors were, hey-o!
Some person says the tapestry behind the couch was his hemorrhoid cushion. Oof. Tragically, he switched to meth right before one. That solves it. Interesting. George Washington always had some intestinal issues too.
Intestinal issues and gastric issues were very common for soldiers that spent long-term time on campaign during this period. Margarine, for example, was invented so that the French army had a butter substitute that did not need to be refrigerated, so that they would have something in their stores. And that's the kind of thing. I mean, you're instituting a lot of foods that the digestive tract at large volumes should not be exposed to. So it caused a lot of issues during this time, in addition to just general state of well-being too. The march back from Moscow is the most famous, but just being on campaign in general was not pleasant during this time. Smallpox epidemics, typhoid, cholera were the hazards of war. You could lose a battle before you ever got to it just based off of an outbreak.
Yeah. All right, let's see. We've got 3 minutes left. Oh my God. What happened?
What did you do, Odin?
I pressed the wrong button.
So it had to be what was Napoleon's need for this woman. So he was obsessed with her, And I think she was his soulmate, but she wasn't reciprocating. She didn't really love him, I don't think. And I think because of that, he made it love him. It made him love her more. He was obsessed with her. And so,
I mean, for like the first couple of years,
Most of what she was gone for.
like literally the moment he found out all the shit that she was doing, that marriage fell apart quick. I mean, we did a whole show about Josephine. Like,
No, but just to recap briefly, I mean, basically it's a whirlwind romance. They get married, and then he goes off on campaign. And by the, he's about a quarter of a mile to a mile outside of Paris, and she's already snagged somebody new. So it didn't go well for him, and he's heartbroken. That does come across in his writing, and he did write her a lot of love letters, and even I think they mentioned it here. They're juvenile. They're very small-minded, very not crude in the 19th century text for style and format. What you would call today like high school juvenile level stuff. Very immature. Yes, I think he was definitely infatuated with her, but she was also an older woman that was much more experienced, and he was not exactly successful with the ladies prior to Josephine. So,
well, I mean, he didn't really have to be like charismatic by the time that he became Napoleon. Like, you're the emperor of pretty much Europe at that point. Yes, he liberated a lot of these territories and what have you, but by the time the Russian campaign's about to start, he is in control of the European peninsula. Like, nobody's going to be turning him down if he wants to. But yeah,
it shows in his letters, which are sometimes juvenilely loving or sexual, that
it should be noted that Napoleon also wrote a bunch of juvenile, like, romantic novellas back when he was a young man as well.
Kind of embarrassing to read and think, oh my God, you really wrote this. She never read them. There were a bundle of them in her bedroom. She never opened them, which says something. She didn't really care. And then later she began, once he said to her, we must be divorced because you cannot give me a successor. So in a way, it was tragic for him. And it became at that moment tragic for her because she lost her security. But he looked after so well.
I think that, all right, so, and like, this is the whole thing. By the time their divorce happens, and we talked about this during the Josephine stream, Napoleon and Josephine
they were living entirely separate lives.
They were, but there was like, she was genuinely somber by all accounts.
Yes, and the irony, if you could label it as such, in their relationship is the infatuation and adoration that Napoleon experienced towards Josephine was reciprocated at the end by Josephine to Napoleon because of how well he took care of her.
Yes.
And I think that's something you see is she was a younger woman. She came from affluence and power. He came from nothing. And he was security for her early in their stage. He was infatuated with her. And as his infatuation dwindled because of her misgivings and mistakes and multiple
appreciation with other people grew.
Yes, and even after their divorce, he gave her an entire chateau, which was, and the expense was massive. Honestly, he couldn't afford it, but he still kept it up because that's his level of respect for her, even following their divorce.
The generosity was enormous.
You think you're great? You are just a tiny little brute that is nothing without me.
But in the publicity,
that line freaking annoys me to no end.
That's the only thing, man. And I could give a shit if Netflix wants to make a Hannibal movie and cast Denzel. It's lines like that that bother me, because it's lines like that that are going to be the thing that people walk away from and have some kind of inflection with, and they're
Yeah,
never going to pick
but
up the book.
it's actively been like at the core of their marketing campaign too. They want people to be looking for this line. They want people to be looking for this scene, and it's going to be like the scene that the movie hinges on. I guarantee you, it's going to be the thing that causes him a moment of doubt at Waterloo. It's going to be it's going to be this massive part that's going to affect the third act of the film, because it's very clear Josephine is unwell there, right? So this is post divorce. She's getting sick. And then she plants this seed of doubt into him. And I'm so freaking annoyed. But yeah.
You also used the word tyrant. So, like, are you worried that this is going to be swept into the kind of cultural? Is Napoleon good? Was he bad? How should we feel about him?
I think
I think
he was great and brutal. You have to be. He makes some pretty tough decisions and choices, right? And so, how many people would die during his battles, and how many civilians suffered along the way? It's like addressing Marcus Aurelius.
Not nearly as many as contemporaries.
Almost all of Europe benefited from what Napoleon did.
Yes.
Literacy rates, educational rates, the life of the average person improved all across Europe. He upset the apple cart of the monarchies and destroyed a lot of the systems that would never be fully replaced, to the benefit of all. And what he created was the foundation of the concept that all men are equal under the law.
Yep. And I'm fairly certain he's about to try and make a parallel to antiquated warfare. But the fact of the matter is you can't really talk about collateral damage in this stage to the degree that you would in antiquated warfare or even modern warfare, because battlefields were chosen, right? And that, like, it was generally practice. You choose a battlefield because it's a place that's effectively void of civilian fucking life. Like, there are towns nearby so that you can establish supply chains for your troops. But like the notion of brigandry and everything like that, not really a deal. Now, don't get me wrong, there were instances of that.
Like Quatre Bras was fought at a crossroads, and there was a village there, and yes, there were civilians present. Waterloo was famously fought near two farms, La Haye Saint and Hugomont. Yes, civilians were there, but there was certainly no events, unless it's a siege of and usually a siege was always a walled city that was more a fort than a city. You don't see anything to the level of like the firebombing of Dresden. So it's almost comical when you look at the civilian casualty rates of modern campaigns compared to this era, and you try to make that point. It doesn't go anywhere. It's a zero.
No, it's laughable.
But I think became guilty as he got older about what he'd done. You can't be that powerful having not done a lot of massive damage.
So how do you want people to leave this epic? Like, they've come out of the movie theater, they are staggering out of the movie theater. How do you want them to feel when they leave? Do you want them to be fanboys of Napoleon? Do you want them to think about the nature of power and fate?
I think everything. Elated by watching such a spectacle that is, I try to make as real as possible, and hopefully it's as accurate, and therefore I hesitate to use the word because it's dangerous, because people say educational, I don't want to see it as boring. Anything educational boring. Yeah. But and not that you've just walked out learning something.
Wait 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Didn't this motherfucker not even like 10 minutes ago talk about how like diminish people who are coming after him about
Yeah.
inaccuracy. But now he wants people to be leaving his the theater with this grand spectacle and for it to be accurate in a way that is educational but entertaining. Go fuck yourself, you British twat.
Yes. Oh man, you're coming over to my side. And again, man, I want to focus on what way back, an hour ago when we first started this video. And yes, it takes us an hour to get through 16 minutes here on
Hour and a half.
going through things. Focus on the battle scenes and the movie making techniques behind them. He didn't touch on any of it, hardly at all. Like we had a couple of brief moments where we talked about Austerlitz, and that was it.
Jesus, Mo. I believe he asked if those critics were there back then, not that he didn't care about the accuracy. Rumbleroo Comics asks, can you imagine how fun a Marcus Aurelius movie would be? It would be about a guy not reacting to the lunatics around him. I don't know. Aurelius wasn't really surrounded by lunatics.
Aurelius was surrounded by men of his same character.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, we're talking about like the Pax Romana, and Aurelius is set up very well by both the efforts of Hadrian and Antonius Pius. He's got a very solid foundation. The Roman
Aurelius had the benefit of the emperors that came before him that did a really good job to set him up so that he could spend time to write
since the Flavians.
Right, he could spend the time to write his thoughts down instead of making sure the kingdom was stable, because it already was stable. And so that's why he is the philosopher king as far as Plato is concerned. He's what you want.
Yes.
You want hard men to come before the philosopher king to be stable, and then you have a period of stability, and he's able to the intelligent guy finally gets to the table and is able to like just run things efficiently.
Well, and I would say Hadrian is really the benchmark of like establishing the philosopher king.
That's what I just said.
I thought you said Aurelius did.
No, I said Aurelius benefited from that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
He is the culmination of the philosopher. Hadrian's the one that gets all the credit, or should get all the credit, because he's the one that has his nose to the grindstone that's building everything. The foundation is the hardest thing to build. He builds the foundation.
He establishes the limits of the empire. He ensures that the legions are up to snuff on the borders, because like outside of the campaigning legions, the auxiliaries that were left to do border support had kind of been allowed to slack off, and so he brings them order. But like Aurelius is also like a rare thing of he is the philosopher king, but he is also no slouch in terms of being a general. Like he has some pretty big military pursuits under his reign. Things don't really start to fall apart until Commodus, and that's a whole other thing that I can talk on one in Rome at some point. Oh, and downplaying the contributions of Hadrian. The wall just got 10 feet high.
I know, right, Mo? I can't believe I'm hearing it here. I'll have to talk to Matt C and make sure he checks him hard on Thursday.
I'm not an anti-Hadrian guy. I like Hadrian.
Yeah, but you know what? I'll give you. You're not giving Hadrian enough credit there. I agree with Mo. And the other thing is, I've heard you talk shit about Claudius, and I will never forgive you for that either.
Look, man, Claudius is actually, you know, who is an emperor that I like. I mean, he did some really terrible stuff, but he, in a way,
now, folks, I've got him off topic.
I hate you. He, in a way, facilitates the success of the four good emperors.
Yeah, no, I think he said arguably. You know, we need to table that and talk about that on the Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a minute left. Let's finish the minute. We can do it.
Film, who knows? But whether they'll ever have this many people replicating Waterloo ever again, or whether
you
they're
know,
just going to be tempted to do it.
I hope so. I hope it doesn't go away.
I hope so.
I think everyone loves to have a bedtime story, don't they?
Ridley Scott, thank you very much
Thank you, man.
indeed. I really enjoyed that.
I must warn you, I will not be the second in command.
Yeah, we've already seen all this stuff. I'm closing out. All right. So this is what I will say in terms of the interview. Do I think that Dan Snow has lost any credibility as a historian? Not especially. I mean, the guy's predominantly a YouTube guy. I thought the interview was fine. I do wish he had thrown Scott some hard balls and checked him a little bit on some things. But I don't think like he came off as I'm just kissing this dude's ass the entire time either. Like, yes, he's excited about the movie. But I don't know. I've seen worse. Ridley Scott is an asshole. And that's what I got out of this interview.
It's a disappointing interview because Snow has a lot of good stuff out there, and
yes, he does.
It feels like something that you'd see on like a press junket, like you talked about earlier. Yeah. And it feels directly in response to the article as trying to like iron out a little bit of the hostility to the segment that is the people that are going to go see this movie, which are historical nuts like you and I. That, yeah, man. I think we even mentioned this before, but like Last of the Mohicans, I can stop that movie about every 2.5 minutes and point out this is a problem and this is a problem and this is a problem.
But it's still Last.
But it's still a great fucking movie, and you are engaged. It's the same thing with Gladiator. We both can stop that movie every 2 minutes and point out another problem with a Roman officer's uniform, or why are there stirrups, or that style of saddle wasn't invented until 800 years after this battle occurred.
I will spare the chat my 1.5-hour rant on the sacrilege of having a Roman woman in the Senate House, let alone having her lecture to senators.
But do you know where a woman would be welcome?
The Forum.
In the Spartan house. And she would be able to address all of the other men because she would be considered a property holder. Just to cite our rant from last week, Thursday. Thought I'd draw that in.
Fair enough. Well, let's take a look at this chat here really quick before we wrap up. Make sure that we didn't miss anything. Okay.
I am always amazed that there are more than 2 people in our chat listening to us rant about.
Hey man, we have
arguably.
I
can't imagine that. I can't imagine that there are that many people that are either they're just here just for the chat. But man, I'd like to think that 1 or 2 of them are actually here just to enjoy the back and forth.
So some person commented the J in Josephine is an H sound. Napoleon's story will be ridleyed with holes.
Heyo.
Some person added again, Napoleon, I got you all of Europe's fanciest dildos and still you cheat on me.
The first Steely Dan. Ironic.
I'm going to skip a comment really quick because Mo had the best reply to this. Show some respect that dildo had a name. Hippolyte.
Oh, that cuts deep, man.
Oof. I guess the big question everyone wants to know is how do you think Napoleon would comic skate if he was alive today? I don't think he okay.
He wouldn't be comic skate.
He just wouldn't care. This would just be like what? Okay. I'm gonna go read a classical war book. Napoleon was great, but not as great as me, Ridley Scott.
Snug said that's a great summation for
of the interview.
Just a one line for the interview. He does, man. And that's the weird part is you watch Scott in some other interviews for other films, and he comes across like he's very interested and passionate, but not here. Here he just comes across as a complete asshole.
Aurelius founded Little Caesar Stutterheim. You want hard men? Speak for yourself. Ogden downplaying the contributions of Hadrian. I already read that one. Stutterheim From Aldous on the farm, just off Orwell Lane, Stutterheim wasn't a solid logistician or a full subscriber to the Prussian School of Deployment Methodology at Rumble Comics.
What? I'm sorry. I have to actually use some of my schooling occasionally.
If Dan hit him with any hardball questions or gotchas, Ridley would have to give
Nothing.
Ridley reply, "You know nothing, Dan." Dan Snow. Okay, that's fair.
I'm screenshotting that right now.
That's
Thank you, Mo.
fantastic.
I will be giving that to Jeremy.
Ridley would have just asked him if he was there, Mo. The kitchen? She would have been fucking all the orgies. I don't care much about the holiday stuff. Hollywood stuff. I'm here just for the history talk. Well, we'll be back to history talk this upcoming
Next Monday, maybe.
Yeah. So long as we're both here. Elbow cough, elbow cough, elbow cough. Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, it's been an hour and a half. We're 30 minutes over when we normally go, but I wanted to make
That's
sure
fine. This was a lot of fun, man.
This was a blast.
This is the kind of stuff that I think you can probably expect more from us on, and it's not just Ridley Scott's Napoleon. There's other even Rod Steiger as Napoleon, and there's a bunch of other great movies that we could talk about here. And then even after Napoleon, I think there's a lot of opportunity. To talk about the history of some of these other films, because we seem to get more resonance when we're talking about film than we do when we're just talking straight history.
We do also, whenever we get to the Peninsular Campaign, we need to do like a series of Sharp specials.
Well, yes. Well, once we get to the Peninsular Campaign, then we can tie in everything to Sharp. So
exactly, everything's just going to be a Sharp GIF and a Sharp meme. It's just. Like you were talking about all this when you were talking about Napoleon getting bled by the leeches, the first thing that came to my mind is Simerson going, "Yes, it's the Scarify is the latest thing in London. Bleed me, damn you!
Bleed me, damn you!" He's a fine gentleman and a good officer.
Oh goodness.
Okay, what was the Major's name?
Major Hogan.
Yes, Major Hogan was a good man, sir.
Oh no, you're thinking of the one that
that dies. You know, Major Hogan was the
Major Hogan's the intelligence officer.
Yeah.
God, he's the Scotsman.
Oh man, now you're
again. This is killing me. Hold on. You know what? We'll just play the.
Yeah, just pull it up. I can't believe you don't have
it. Hold on.
If any of you want to read Stutterheim's PDF, just let me know. I'll be happy to email it to you.
All right.
Amazing website.
Hold on 1 second,
You'll
guys.
need your web.
Oh my God.
And Amy.
All right, guys, we're going to put this up, and then this is going to be how we close it. Oh, we can't, because this is going to take longer than 30 seconds.
It's fine. Just
hold on.
About there-ish. Is it that far in?
We need...
Right there. That's the face. Yep.
To be gazetted by the newly... to be commanded by the newly gazetted Captain Gibbons?
No, sir.
All right. So, all right. This gives us a little bit over a minute, but we'll be fine.
Major Lennox must answer. Major.
There we go.
Lennox.
Major Lennox. All right, hold on. We'll go back to this.
The fault was not mine, sir. Major Lennox must answer. Major Lennox answer with his life, as you should have done if you had any sense of honor. You lost the colors of the King of England. You disgraced us.
Boom.
Sir. You shamed us, sir.
Boom.
You will answer.
Get it.
The South Essex is stood down in name. If I wipe the name, I may wipe the shame. I am making you a battalion of detachments you will fetch and carry. The Light Company put up a fight, so I will let it stand under the command of a new captain.
To be commanded by the newly gazetted Captain Gibbons.
To be commanded by the newly gazetted Captain Sharp, sir.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is the best part.
I
Get
have a
checked.
cousin at Horse Guard, sir. And I have friends at court.
A man who loses the king's colors loses the king's friendship. You have two choices: to hide in England or be a hero in Spain. I shall help you to be a hero.